Member for Surrey Newton.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. It is always a pleasure and honor to have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, as I have always said, to stand in this House. Just being here, Mr. Speaker, is honor for anyone to have the experience to participate in debates that matters to British Columbians. Especially, I think it's, I feel more privileged and honored actually to be here looking at our history in British Columbia, Mr. Speaker, where people that look like us, first the laws were they wouldn't be even allowed in British Columbia. Those laws were made right here, Mr. Speaker, in this House. And here we are, with the help of all those people that came before us, that worked towards building this province to be more inclusive and to be more fair, to be more just, Mr. Speaker. As a result, many of us, starting with Mo Sahora back in 1986, followed him to these chambers, Mr. Speaker, and participated in debates that changed British Columbia for the better, Mr. Speaker. And I always want to thank those who came before us, opened up these doors for us, and worked hard. And many of those British Columbians out there who fought for a fair and just society, Mr. Speaker. And as a result of that, I am, like yourself, are here, Mr. Speaker. So it is a real honor to be here to represent in this beautiful province, people of the province, in this House, Mr. Speaker. And having said that, Mr. Speaker, I would like to go back to, I guess, our roots, our support, our families who were behind. In my case, I'm sure in case of many those who are here, our wives, our spouses, our partners, our children, our extended family members who helped us and showed faith in us in sending us here, Mr. Speaker. And in my case, I would like to say thank you to my lovely wife, Rajvinder, my son Kulpreet, his wife, my daughter-in-law Parveen, and my daughter, Dr. Jasmine Bains, and my two beautiful grandchildren, Rihanna and Braden. Mr. Speaker, it's a pleasure to have those type of people around you who are have been a bedrock for me, Mr. Speaker, all this time. And all those my extended family members who always stood by me. It wasn't always easy to be in a public life, but they stood by me, with me, supported me, and as a result, I'm able to represent my constituents of Surrey Newton here. So I want to thank them all. Mr. Speaker, our family went through a tough time in 2015. I personally lost two of my best friends, Darrell Wong, who I grew up in the labor movement, who was president of our local union when I was vice president. Gordy McRae, who was vice president when we were together in the IWA, Vancouver local, Mr. Speaker. I miss them dearly. Darrell Wong left untimely, Mr. Speaker, and we really feel his loss in the labor movement. And then we lost our beloved Aaron last year, Mr. Speaker, and we miss his smile and we miss him every day. And I want to thank all those people who gave us the support during these tough times that is necessary for you to continue on, Mr. Speaker. So I want to thank many members in this House who always send me a note of support, and all those people out there who stood with us. Mr. Speaker, we're a pretty strong family, and despite all these tough times we all go through from time to time, we will survive, and we will continue on with the work that we do. I'm so proud about our family. It's a huge family. We have in our family people from all walks. They are business people, they work in management, they are laborers, they're doctors, they're dentists, lawyers, teachers, accountants, farmers, office workers, Mr. You name it. We have, just like any other family, we have those. And so it's been a pleasure to have such a strong family to rely upon day in and day out. So I want to thank them all. Mr. Speaker, I am I am blessed with a great Surrey Newton executive, along with my longtime friends and constituency assistants, Emily Zimmerman, Simrat Chabra, and Amber Armstrong. They've been with me ever since I got elected. Amber joined us a few years ago, but Simrat and Emily's been with me since 2005. Janice McDonald, who, and her husband Mike was president of my executive before this time. They both decided to move to the island, so I want to thank them so much for helping and supporting and building that constituency, such a strong constituency. And now the current executive, led by Darrell Causey, Dal Binning, Simrat Chabra, Amber Armstrong, Avni Joel, Caroline Christensen. Mr. Speaker, they are great people to be around. And when I'm here, when I'm not in the office, the constituency work goes on out there, but my office work with the help of Emily, Simrat, and Amber, I don't have too many worries when they are there, Mr. Speaker, and I get so much positive responses from constituents who have gone through my office and received such a friendly and supportive approach from my staff. So I'm really happy that how we together can help those people who need help, who comes to our offices. So it's a great place to live, and I will say the great constituency people to represent. Mr. Speaker, like my colleague from Green Timber spoken earlier, my constituency almost matches hers when it comes to diversity. And how engaged this community is. Mr. Speaker, they participate in building this province, building our communities to make it better every day. You know, when you go around, Mr. Speaker, all you have to do is go to many of those banquet halls that we have. Grand Taj, Bombay Banquet Hall, Bollywood, Punjab, Dhaliwal, Crystal, Mirage, Royal King, Crown Palace, Mr. Speaker. There are a number of others. Any given day you go, even tonight, I challenge anyone, if you go into any one of those today, you'll find in one or two of those, there are people raising funds. They're doing things to help others, Mr. Speaker. And then you look around all these South Asian community radio stations, no matter where their need is, the call come from, whether it's from Pakistan, Philippines, or Haiti, Nepal, Mr. Speaker, or our local needs. Hospital need addition, hospital need to purchase equipment, our schools need help, Children's Hospital in Vancouver needs help. Something always is going on, and that community is every day engaged. And I feel proud to no end that those are the people who actually go unnoticed in many cases. They simply are out there in the backgrounds, they do work, sell tickets, arrange these events, and they do their work, and the money is collected, passed on to where the money is needed, and then they are gone and do their own work. Mr. Speaker, it's so proud to see so many of those people doing that kind of work. So I'm really happy that I am part of that community that is so engaged and that is so worried about improving and making the lives of all of us a better lives to live and play and make a better communities for all of us to enjoy, Mr. Speaker. I'll tell you the extent of how engaged they are. I received a stack of letters from Princess Margaret School, Mr. Speaker, and I will read you some of those letters that how worried these students are in high school. They worry about poverty in our community, in our society. Mr. Speaker, you can read those letters, and I'll read some of those. The real message in there is that we are living in, if not the richest country in the world, or one of the richest province in the world, Mr. Speaker, and we still have so many children living in poverty. Mr. Speaker, and that's what they are telling us. And I think before I do anything else, I will go into some of those letters, Mr. Speaker, and show you how they feel about what we can do, what we should do, Mr. Speaker. And I will name you some of those students who have sent us these letters. They are, I think, under the leadership of the teacher Fernanda Livisoto. I hope I am pronouncing the name correctly. And the letters are from a number of students. Here's a letter from Zainab McIntosh, Ekam Dami, and William Gantu. This is what they have to say. They said, the reason for this letter is to inform you about the current state of poverty in our province. We believe that if our municipal and provincial government raise minimum wage, welfare, and create a stable poverty reduction plan, then the statistics of 1 in 5 children living in poverty should change to a much lower statistics. Mr. Speaker, they go on to say, without a plan, many British Columbians are living in hardship of acquiring money to fund their daily lives, therefore being classified as the working poor. They go on to say that the amount of social housing and increased access of this type of housing is believed that it could be reduced by creating a greater amount of social housing and increased access of this type of housing. Furthermore, welfare should not only increase but also should become more accessible. Currently, welfare has a long wait time, involves too much paperwork, and is not easy to access to those in poverty. These are these three students put together this letter. Here's a letter from Akansha Raju and Mobeen Faiz. They're saying that we were alarmed to learn that the British Columbia has the highest poverty rate in Canada for the past 13 years. The richest 20% of the citizens have 75% of the wealth, whereas the poorest 20% have zero of the wealth. These are very troubling facts and show the inequality between people living in BC. British Columbians are known to be very generous, yet about 169,420 children are living in poverty. We provide much charity, including food and clothing donations, and provide homeless shelters. However, we do not issue justice. That's the letter from those two students. And here's a letter from 4 students put together, Kiranjit Phul, Sharanveer Sodhi, and Ishreet Sarah Simran Gill. Mr. Speaker, they say this: we want BC to have a poverty reduction plan put in place so that we can reduce the provincial poverty rates. Currently, the government is spending $9 billion a year to keep people in poverty by putting up more and more soup kitchens and food banks, when you can put a poverty reduction plan in place by putting in $4 billion a year. We think that our government is focusing on charity, not justice. Food banks and clothing drives are Band-Aids. They will help, but won't fix the problem. Mr. Speaker, and that's from those 4 students. Here's a letter from Carmen Opal and Diksha Topper. They're saying, I'm reading only parts of their letters. I hope if they're listening and watching that they are not saying that I'm I'm not reading the letters entirely. I am not, because I have so many letters and so much to talk about in half an hour. Here's the parts of the letter by Carmen Opal and Diksha Thapar. We need change in British Columbia, and the way we can get there is by developing and implementing a comprehensive BC poverty reduction plan. For example, one impact of poverty in BC is the impact and cost associated with poor health. Poverty makes people sick due to inadequate find to buy food and need to live healthy lives, Mr. Speaker. And here's Nanki Dhaliwal, Gabriel Ferrer, and Priya Dhaliwal. This is what they have to say. Our first concern is that the minimum wage is incredibly low. It is not adequate to those who rely on this low income and are being affected by this problem. We would like to see a raise in minimum wage by an amount that will allow people to be able to live their lives with satisfaction and no concerns. Our second goal is that we would like to have poverty reduction plan. Although BC is a very giving province, we are the only province lacking poverty reduction plan, Mr. Speaker. Again, they talk about spending $9 billion in charity, but not enough, which they talk about is only, it will take $4 billion to put up a real poverty reduction plan, Mr. Speaker. Here's Avery Dean, Kaylee McCormick, Zainab Haq, Vita Darbari. We are students from Princess Margaret Secondary School trying to spread awareness on how BC sadly doesn't have a poverty reduction plan that we so desperately need. Mr. Speaker, it says that in our leadership class, we read a story about a single mother who was living in poverty in BC with her 2 children. She had finished off her bachelor's degree and was $60,000 in debt. She was living off $6 a day to provide food for her and her children while still having to pay for bills and other essentials needed to survive. Eventually, a church in her neighborhood donated some money to her, which helped her to start paying off her debt and is now recovering from poverty. Mr. Speaker, these are the children. They should be concentrating on education, and they are so passionate about what goes on in our community, in our society, and I think we should, I say, thank you very much, all of you, thinking about everyone else in our society and trying to make their lives better and trying to convince us in this House to come up with a poverty reduction plan. Mr. Speaker, and so there's Rachel Reed and Loveleen Walia actually put together really, you know, they put together a chart here showing how much money this person gets and where the money goes and what is left for them. They said that at minimum wage, 410 working, that's what they make, $410 before taxes, working 40 hours. Subtract $61 a week for tax, $349 of money left over. And then from there, $700 for 1-bedroom apartment, $200 food per month, $180 cable and internet, $40 phone bill, $130 monthly bus pass, $30 hydro bill, and they are left with $4.14 a day based on these monthly expenses to spend on clothing and entertainment. Mr. Speaker, can you believe this? This is the lot of work done, these students, and I say thank you very much, Princess Margaret. Thank you very much, all of you students, for bringing this issue of very, very important issues to us and to our attention, because this is where decisions can be made. This is where those lives can be changed by and with the stroke of a pen. If we have a real poverty reduction plan, and I agree with all of those students, we do need a poverty reduction plan. Other provinces have it with goals and targets and timelines. Those with target and timelines, Mr. Speaker, are succeeding in reducing poverty in their provinces. We are the only one that we don't have it, and therefore we continue to stay at the bottom as far as the poverty reduction and the poverty rate in our communities are concerned, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I also, we have a number of issues with all the stuff that our community and the people living in community, they do, raising money, and I've just mentioned before, and working and helping out each other. The students are engaged, Mr. Speaker, but we do have very serious issues. that we need to deal with, and that's why I'm standing up again and bringing those issues here. I talked about crime this morning, and I will talk about that a little later in more detail. Education is another area that I want to talk about. Mr. Speaker, everyone who lives in Surrey, even the elected members from that side, they understand the need to invest, capital investment is needed in our Surrey schools. We have 7,000 students that are in their education is in portables right now. Mr. Speaker, 7,000. And how do you justify that? When you're talking about billions of dollars announcement here, billions of dollars announcement there, but our school board, the ad hoc committee that was engaged that engaged many of the people in the community, such as Surrey Board of Trade, City Hall, students, the parents, the teachers, they put an ad hoc committee together, and they have been lobbying this government for the last almost 10 years now, but to no avail. Very little money was given, maybe to deal with the 1/3 of our needs, but more students are coming. The district is growing. The population of our students are growing in Surrey School District year by year. 1,000 new students this year, Mr. Speaker, and they end up in portables. When you look at the charts that they have prepared by Surrey School Board, you're looking at over 300 portables in Surrey in next 2 or 3 years, Mr. Speaker. We are already there now. That was their prediction a few years ago. We are already there, 300 portables in Surrey. And sometime, I heard some disturbing statements from the other side, Mr. Speaker, the government side. What's wrong with those portables, Mr. Speaker? They think they're fine. Well, Mr. Speaker, they are not fine for those students, and they're not fine for those parents. We attended a parent district advisory committee only a couple, 3 weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, and I've got some letters here, and I can read to you what they think about this government's lack of leadership, lack of plan to deal with overcrowding in our schools. Not only just the building, Mr. Speaker, but the very basics, they raise the issue of very basics that the students need for their daily education. They have to raise money, they have to fundraise for the basics that the students, the needs of the students in those classrooms, Mr. Speaker. Teachers are paying out of their own pockets so that the students can have the education that they need and deserve, Mr. Speaker. But this government is sitting quietly, and they think everything is fine out there. That's not acceptable to people in Surrey, Mr. Speaker, and that shouldn't be acceptable to anybody, Mr. Speaker, regardless of which party you belong to, which side of this house you sit, because education is one area through which you can actually decrease inequality in society. It probably is the only way you can work toward equality in the society. Whether you are washing dishes somewhere or you're CEO of a bank, if your children have the same opportunity to get the best education possible and all opportunities to upgrade their skills and education, Mr. Speaker, they both will have a same earning power when they finish their school and go into workplace. That's how you reduce inequality in society. But no, not this government, Mr. Speaker. They have neglected that area for so long. Then you take a look, public transportation. I've been listening and watching this government. I could go back to, Mr. Speaker, it was September 2010. The current Minister of TransLink was there as a representing one of the community from Langley, Mr. Speaker, at that time. They signed, the Premier of this province, Mr. Speaker, signed a memorandum of understanding that they will work together to find long-term sustainable funding formula, Mr. Speaker. What happened to that? What happened to that agreement? I just wonder. And then, Mr. Speaker, SkyTrain, the Green Line was built, Evergreen Line was built after a lot of delays. The promise was that the extensions to Surrey will be next. What happened, Mr. Speaker? What happened? They will find a funding formula. They will find a funding formula according to that MOU, Mr. Speaker. So what happened to the funding formula? No. Now it's your turn, Surrey. You have to decide how you want to pay for this. You have to decide how you pay for this, Mr. We'll put you through a referendum, Mr. Speaker. Was there a referendum when Portman was being built? Is there going to be a referendum for the messy tunnel, Mr. Speaker? Well, why, when it comes to Surrey, extension of the public transportation, you must decide yourself, people of Surrey, Langley, and Delta, how you want to pay for this. That wasn't a question for when the Expo line was built, when the Evergreen was built, when the Millennium line was built. No, Mr. Speaker. But Surrey turn comes, no. You decide how you want to pay for it. I think it's not acceptable to those people. Mr. Speaker, it's not only, Mr. Speaker, that we are missing out on opportunity. It is a bad economic policy as well. We're losing out a huge potential, Mr. Speaker, huge potential. There's a lineup after a lineup now. You look at the Patolo Bridge, you look at the Alex Fraser Bridge, Mr. Speaker, lineup after lineup, Mr. Speaker, and Mr. Speaker, you know the facts, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Transportation and especially the Minister of Technology, the facts don't matter to them. Facts don't matter to them at all. They just want to stand up and chirp away, you know, make up the facts as they go. Make them up as they go, Mr. Speaker. So anyway, Mr. Speaker, the facts are the facts, Mr. Speaker. It's not going to change because they try to ignore the facts, Mr. Speaker. Let me say, people are still waiting. People are still waiting when we will get the extension into Surrey of the SkyTrain or LRT, Mr. Speaker. They're still waiting. And, Mr. Speaker, we have subdivisions after subdivisions. In Langley, in Cloverdale, in Surrey, in Delta, they have no bus service to them, Mr. Speaker. No bus service. And you know what? Another 1 million people are moving into Lower Mainland within the next 20 years. Another 1 million, Mr. Speaker. And you know what? Most of them will be, according to Metro Vancouver, coming to south of the Fraser and northeast sectors. Both of them lack services right now to service the population we have today. So it just shows the lack of vision, lack of seeing, you know, past today, Mr. Speaker, as is the case by this government. And you know what? We will be running behind further and further if this bunch continue to rule this province, Mr. Speaker. And it is going to be a travesty, Mr. Speaker. You take a look, Mr. Speaker. You take a look at other areas that we need to deal with. Post-secondary education. This is how we train our population, our future workers, Mr. Speaker. Give them the opportunity to upgrade their skills and training so that they can compete with best of the world, Mr. Speaker. In south of the Fraser, we have almost half of those on per capita basis. When you look at the how many post-secondary education seats are compared to the population, we have maybe 11%, Mr. Speaker, and there's only 11 to 12% that as a result of that 11 to 12% participation rate into the university colleges for students coming out of high schools from that region, whereas the provincial average is about 24%. Mr. Speaker, there's something wrong there, and this government needs to pay attention to that area. And we have, you know, I will talk about, probably I'll save this, my time looks like it's running out. I'll save some of the real good stuff for my budget speech, Mr. Speaker, and maybe we could talk about what the lack of vision by this government that is hurting British Columbian every day, Mr. Speaker. Crime, I talked about this one, I touched on it, continue to go up. And I hope that the Minister of Technology had gone since this morning and checked some facts, Mr. Speaker, because he had no clue. He still buried their head in the sand to say that the crime is going down in Surrey, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, where does he live? Where does he live, Mr. Speaker? And RCMP statistics are clearly indication all of the Mr. Speaker, the criminal code offenses are going up quarter over the quarter, Mr. Speaker, and year by year. And they don't see any relief in sight. And that's why it's a dangerous, Mr. Speaker, situation where people will start to lose faith in our crime-fighting strategy. They will lose faith in our local police, Mr. Speaker. That is not the way to run our province.
Thank you, member.
So my time runs out. Thank you very much for the opportunity,
Thank you,
and
member.
I'll have more to say later.